Alrighty, welcome everyone to Med Exposed. We're so excited to have you all joining here with us today. Today is going to be lots of fun. It'll be really relaxed. We'll have lots of casual chats. Now, everyone in the audience, I would love for you to just grab your phone and scan the QR code on the screen. What that will do is it direct you to a Mentimeter, which you'll be able to fill out a little poll. So just slide as to answer the 3 questions on whether you agree or disagree, and it's something that we'll chat about a bit later. What we'll do, we'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we are conducting this webinar on, the people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to their elders past and present, and I extend a welcome to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders that may be in the audience. So what we'll do, I'll give a brief introduction of our panelists today. I'll give you an overview of how today will work, and then we'll get started. So what we'll do, I'll introduce some of our panelists, and while I'm talking about them, maybe just give a bit of a wave to the audience so we can see you. So what we'll do, we'll start off with Sarah, and now a lot of you may have heard of Sarah Rav because she's all over social media, TikTok, Instagram, and she's in her final year studying med. She does know a thing or two about balance. She manages her time studying. She's on clinical placements in hospitals, and she balances work, gym, pretty much everything. She's a couple months away from completing her med degree. Our next guest is Shanaka, and now he is the master or the king of helping students getting into med. So he knows everything there is about the UCAT or about interviews, and he's helped over 1,000 students get into medicine. Not only, but he's created so many programs and courses to really help equip Australia's future doctors. And our last panelist for today is Jeff. Now, Jeff is the head tutor at KIS Academics. So what he does, he manages the hiring and manages the hiring of over 100 of the best tutors in Australia. He is also a med student at Monash, and it's interesting to get his perspective today because while he's in his second year, both first year and this year were all online. So he'll have a lot to share about, completing a med degree while, in a global pandemic. How today will work. So we're just going to have a casual chat and I'll be interviewing the panelists today, but there'll be 3 kind of categories of our chats. The first one will all be about getting into med. So I'm sure Shanaka will have lots of tips and advice for you all. The next category will be what first year med is like. So I know Jeff will have lots to share on that. And then the last category will be about what it's like on placement, what it's like balancing work and study, and Sarah will talk to that part. Now, today you are welcome to, make this webinar about you. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat either with your name or you can pop them in anonymously. That's totally fine. And we hope to answer them today as well. Now, before I share my screen, here's your last chance to scan this QR code. And what we'll do, I'll share the results. So I'll give you maybe like 5 seconds and then I'll share my screen. 5, 4, no, this is a scary countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right, so I'll share my screen. Let's see what the results are. So we had 64 respondents and some of the questions were a bit funny. So I know the panelists would love to see this, but I asked, and I thought a lot of people think you have to be really smart to study med. And a lot of people think, yeah, strongly agree. The next one is you won't have a social life studying med, and it's kind of in the middle, but I'm so excited to get our panelists' perspectives on this a little bit later. And the last one, med school is really competitive. Oh, this is something I'm so excited to debrief or actually debunk a bit later as well. So without further ado, I'll just stop share. And then, so what you'll see is all our faces on the screen. We'll start off with our chat. And what we'll do, like I said, first kind of question of discussion will be about year 12s or year 11s who are thinking about applying for med. And my first question, maybe we'll start with Shanaka. Let's talk about the different entries to medicine to become a doctor. So can you possibly explain the difference between direct entry as an undergrad versus doing med school as postgrad study?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Mia. I think probably most of our attendees today are in high school. So for you, you probably are looking at direct entry into med school, but it's useful to know that there's 4 kind of categories of entering med school. And the first one, the one that's most relevant, is as a school leaver, right? So as a school leaver, it's basically people who finished their final year of study and they haven't started university yet. So most of you probably fit into that category. Then there's people who finish high school, take a gap year, and they might, try to enter medical school from there. They're still school leavers as far as that's concerned. There's also what's called provisional entry. So the cool thing is that there's so many different pathways into med school in Australia, and there's actually several degrees where you can be almost sort of guaranteed an offer into med school after you've completed an undergrad, right? So there's sort of guaranteed pathways all around the country. So it's postgrad, but you don't necessarily have to sit the GAMSAT, which is what a lot of people think. There's different ways that works as well. Non-school leaver is the next one. So if you don't succeed or you decide after you've finished year 12 that you want to pursue med, you can actually still sit the UCAT and you can still get into undergrad med even after you've started uni. The number of universities available are a lot less, but you're still allowed to apply. So there's lots of students who apply in that way, and they're university students. And then the last one is graduate entry. So this is where you finish an undergrad degree. It might be science, might be biomed, but it can even be law. It can even be arts. I actually have friends who went through an arts degree, went through an engineering degree, and then they decided they want to get into med. So they sat the GAMSAT in that way. So there's so many misconceptions where people think you have to do science, you have to do biomed, but actually there's so many different ways of entering med school. But the graduate pathway tends to involve the GAMSAT. So that involves completing your undergrad degree and then being accepted into postgrad from there. The last thing I'd probably say about it is, if you know that med is really where your passion lies, trying to get in as a school leaver takes a lot of the stress away, I think. And there's nothing wrong with going for a postgrad entry or anything like that. But most students will benefit and save a lot of time and hassle getting in through this undergrad pathway.
Absolutely. You know what? I actually have no idea about all those options, and it's nice for you to debunk them, because I had no idea you could do an arts or an eng degree and then decide later in life, hey, I want to be a doctor. So it's nice to get a reminder if we do change our minds. It's not the end of the world, really.
100%. Yeah.
And so I'm assuming, so they probably have their heart set on med. Let's maybe talk direct entry med. It's not just getting a high ATAR. There's so many other things that we have to do and jump over all these hurdles. So for example, they've got a high ATAR, we have the UCAT, and then an interview. Maybe let's talk through each of those steps and stages and just give everyone an overview what it's about. So maybe let's begin with the UCAT. What on earth is that?
Yeah, I think the best way for me to explain it is, if you took a sample of really high quality doctors or medical students who are really passionate about becoming a doctor, and you looked at what do these people have in common, what you tend to find is it's not always academic capacity or academic ability. It tends to be certain qualities and abilities or sort of models of thinking that these people tend to have in common. At least this is what the research shows, right? So exams like the UCAT are usually designed to look at these qualities, these abilities and skills, and try to test them in advance. So for example, something like critical thinking, it's not necessarily tested through a high ATAR, right? But there's sections in the UCAT that are specifically designed to look at that, or your ability or thought process in making decisions, or your ability to think abstractly, right? So this UCAT exam is an aptitude test that really looks at how you think and the way that you do things, because they've started to see that you can have a high ATAR, but that's not always the best predictor. So, look, whether you agree with it or not, that's what the test is. And yeah, it's really designed to look at that. In terms of preparing, I always say, if you know that that's what it's testing for, prepare for that, right? I think a lot of people make the mistake of really trying to churn out as much practice as they can and trying to grind it out. But what I've seen is that's not necessarily the best system. Kind of trying to get to the heart of what this UCAT is about and looking at it from a high level perspective just kind of helps you prepare and develop those skills, develop that critical thinking ability, enhance that decision-making capacity. And yeah, so that's probably what I would say about the UCAT. Technically speaking, for those of you who don't know too much about it, 5 sections: verbal reasoning, decision-making, quantitative, abstract, situational judgment, each testing a different skill set.
Can you give us an example question? Like, what would they ask?
Yeah, cool. I can describe a couple. So for something like verbal reasoning, a lot of you would have done maybe reading comprehension. So you can be given a passage about something from maybe history or philosophy, and you are given basically 2 minutes to read that passage and answer 4 questions. But what's different about the UCAT, it's not just like a copy and paste sort of thing, where you just find this word in the text and you use it to answer the question. It's all about inferring what this passage is hinting at, right? And being able to make the correct inferences. So I guess as a doctor, you don't just copy and paste understand something and draw your own conclusions from that. So the UCAT's kind of testing that ability. Another one's pattern recognition. So the 4th section is called abstract reasoning. You're given 2 boxes. One has one type of pattern, maybe every single shape has curved sides. And the other one, every single shape has straight sides. And you need to be able to see that that's what's different and common to those boxes, and then answer questions that have something related to one of those boxes. So that's spatial recognition, your ability to visually organize information in different ways.
This gives me like the GAP vibes. So when we did the GAP back in school, you had all those different shapes and things. This is what I've never sat the UCAT because I'm not a med student, but that's what I'm imagining.
Yeah, I think it's related. Similar principle, I assume.
Love it. And so I understand, like, if someone needs support with the UCAT, there's so many like courses, or like, I know you've got your own, help available, but what do you recommend for students to get support for the UCAT? Like, obviously doing a bunch of practice, but anything else?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the core to it is to realize that with the UCAT, you will need to do a lot of practice, and I'm not sort of trying to shy away from that fact. There's no doubt practice makes a big difference. But if you can remember the quote, practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent, right? And before you really delve into practicing and refining everything, you want to make sure you're approaching it with the right strategies. How do you know you're using the right strategies? Because sometimes you can have 2 people using the same techniques, or you need to make sure that you're expressing the right skill set for what's being tested. So for me, like the way I did it, I set the UMAT initially, but I've done the same thing with the UCAT, is I went and really studied the research behind this exam. When they're doing verbal reasoning, what are they looking for? What's a skill? And I used to think it's just your reading speed, but actually no, it's also testing how you can read something and form a conclusion. So I practiced that skill again and again and improved that ability. And then I start practicing that so I get sharper and faster with that. So my biggest tip would be focus on the skills that are being tested, improve the ability that's behind this exam, and then practice, because that's where you'll refine it and be able to get to a place where you can answer these questions like it's second nature, which is how any skill works, right? I remember when I was driving a car for the first time, I had no idea how people do this. And I can almost do it with my eyes closed now, right? So it's like that with anything.
I love it. Now, okay, I've got to run and turn the light on because you can see in my Zoom background I'm fading away because it's getting dark here. But I've got a question for both Jeff, Sarah, and yourself.
Yeah.
And the attendee has asked, did you all succeed at the UCAT the first time? So maybe you can take in turns answering. I'll be back. I've got to turn my light on.
Cool. Maybe I'll give a quick one, and then Jeff and Sarah, you guys will have a lot more to say about it, I think. So for me, I don't think any of us sat the UCAT the first time around. I think we all would have. Oh, you did, Jeff. Cool. Yeah, nice. I sat the UMAT, and then it turned into the UCAT later. One thing I really want to just put out there is chill. Like, I know so many people who don't succeed in their first attempt getting to med school, and the key thing to kind of know is it really what you want to do? Do you really feel a sense of purpose and passion towards it? because I think we happen to live in a country where we're so lucky that you have so many opportunities, so many pathways, that if it's what you want to do, you're going to get there. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. Take it easy. If it's what you want to do, you'll get there.
Awesome. How did you go, Sarah?
Yeah, so I sat the UMAT, which I think is very different, because I do a bit of UCAT tutoring as well. It's very different to what the UCAT is today, but it's exactly sort of the same reasoning as the UCAT. You know, it's that aptitude, that skill. Do you have the correct judgment? Do you know how to make the right decisions when faced with something that you're not used to? And I think that for example, I luckily did quite well on the UMAT, but I have friends who didn't do as well as I did, and they're still in med today as well, same year level as me. So I don't particularly think that, well, I mean, I'm sure we'll go into this later on, but for postgrad, for direct entry into medicine, there's a lot of things that count, including your ATAR and the med interviews. And if UMAT or UCAT isn't your strong point, there are other things that you can shine in. And so it's really, you know, what you want to put your effort into and focusing on your strengths.
Absolutely. And Jeff, what was your experience?
Yeah, so I sat the UCAT, and to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the UCAT at all, because I'm the sort of person who likes to take things a bit more slow, and UCAT is very paced in compared to UMAT, let's say. So let's say I didn't fare as well as I wanted to do in the UCAT. So initially when I got the results, I was a bit discouraged. But as Sarah said, there's so many things that count towards your entry requirements into medicine. So I started to do a bit more work at high school for VCE for the academic side to get a high ATAR, and then I did quite well for my interview. So because there are 3 requirements, even if you don't do as well in one of them, you can still compensate for that very adequately in the other 2 compartments. But overall, I think UCAT is something that you really have to start, let's say, prepare and really know the tactics and the strategies you need to approach UCAT. Because like me, you may not be someone who just gets it straight away, but with a bit of practice, I know that a lot of my friends practice a lot for the UCAT and they did a little bit better than me. So there are definitely ways around that, even if you think that UCAT isn't your cup of tea.
Yeah, and as anonymous person actually asked, if you fail it or if you don't do as well, can you resit it? And I believe you can. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, you can actually, the first time you can do it is in year 12, but there's literally people who are 35 sitting this UCAT exam, right? There's people who are doing it for the 3rd time this year. So there's no limit. And that's the cool thing about it. Each time you do it, you'll probably learn a little bit more about yourself and the best strategies for you to take. So yeah, you can keep doing it.
Perfect. And I know we can talk about the UCAT forever. We might come back to some more questions at the end, but I want to ask about the interview. So a lot of direct entry med courses require us to sit an interview, which can be so scary. We're used to doing tests and exams, and now we have to go speak in front of someone. Can you give us what it entails? What will they ask us? What can we expect?
Yeah, cool. I think the simplest way to think of it is, by the time you get to the interview, to be honest, they know you're intelligent, right? For you to have gotten to that point, you've gotten a high ATAR, you've done well with your UCAT. So the interview, I think what takes a lot of the pressure off is it's not so much something you learn. It's more about how can you discover how to present yourself and who you actually are as clearly as you can to this person who's listening. And each university looks for different qualities, right? They have different themes that they're testing for. So it's about knowing those really. For example, Monash is really big on motivation, teamwork, communication skills. And you think to yourself, okay, well, how do I resonate with these themes, and what experiences do I have in each of these areas? And you start to explore that, and you realize it's not trying to make something up, and you're not trying to just rote learn things. It's bringing out the things that you already have and learning how to communicate it so someone who doesn't know you will learn it. So very quickly, I always say there's 3 things. The first part is content, which is what you say, but you guys probably have heard people saying the most amazing things, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
So the second part is structure, which is how you say it. right? And then again, you might be listening to someone who's so intelligent, there's like this nice flow to it, but they just sound a bit fake. So the third part is presentation, and it's your presentation skills. It's something that's unique to you. Some people are very passionate, some people are very empathetic, some people are very sincere. Each person has their own unique way of presenting that's true to them. So I think interviews, it's not about being good or bad. Everyone can be a great presenter in interviews. It's just about learning about yourself and how to put that forward.
This is so true. I'm so glad you said it, because I think if you're applying direct entry to med, you genuinely want to do it so that like your genuine nature will shine through of like why you want to be there,
100%.
what you want to spot. So I think it's something that you just got to be you. I know it sounds so cringe. Just be yourself. Like, yeah, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Excellent. And the last kind of part for like entry to med is like a high ATAR. And I'm going to ask a question that I want you to debunk is, do we really need to get like a 99.95 to get into med?
No. So, I mean, there's no, you definitely do not, even though we've got a 99.95 here. No, but I mean, I will say that you generally see very high ATARs in med. So it's important and we shouldn't shy away from that. But I've tutored people who've gotten 97 ATARs and they've gotten into med school, right? And Sarah, Rav, Manoj, Sarah, Jeff, Manoj, you guys will probably have people in your cohort with lower ATARs who've gone through. So it's not the be all and end all, but it is definitely something you should put some effort to. With my students, if I look at all the people I've kind of coached and tutored, and I was to pick out what's common about almost all the ones who do really well, I think there's a few qualities. And the first one is just like this really clear intrinsic drive. It's like they want to do it and they know why they want to do it, right? So they're driven by a clear sense of purpose. That gives resilience because it's a tough journey. Commitment, I think, is the best friend of achievement, and it drives the discipline and the consistency that you need to go through something like year 12 and stick it through. And finally, what most people neglect is balance. It's like you have to have balance. Take care of your mental health, your emotional health, stay healthy, have a social life. The most successful students tend to be the ones who are actually involved in a lot of things. I think Manoj is a great example of that. This guy did like everything when he was at Halebury, right? So you'll just find that there's, again, so many misconceptions about getting a high ATAR, and it's like getting on the grind, but not quite. It's staying sane and being able to balance your way through it while still staying determined and disciplined as well.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to move to like our second theme of discussion, which is about first year med, but I was just going through the Q&A and I found a great question. And the question is about when to prepare for the UCAT. So Anonymous requested this, and it's like, should we be preparing year 11? Should we do it in the year 12 holidays? What is your like hot tip? When should we like dedicate time to prepare for the UCAT?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there's one right answer for it. I've seen people who've started preparing, in the middle of year 12, around April or May, and they've gone on to do spectacularly. Most of the time, that's not what happens, right? And I think these people probably have a high aptitude for the test. So if you are like that and you're naturally very capable, you may be able to get by in a couple of months. Most of the time, given what we're trying to work on here are skills, and you want to be patient in trying to cultivate those abilities. And I think you want to take a lot of pressure off yourself in year 12 as well. So I tend to recommend, if you have the chance, try to start before year 12. Especially in the year 11 holidays, at the end of year 11, that's a great opportunity to get a really good understanding of how this UCAT exam works and start to work around it. So I would generally recommend mid-year 11 through to end of year 11 as a good starting point. But if it's, you're in year 12, it's not that there's no hope. You might just have to work a little bit harder.
Absolutely. And then if you start earlier, time's on your side, I guess.
Yeah.
So you have time to like get the harder questions or like really think about it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, now let's shift. Discussion number 2, first year med. Jeff, this is your time to shine because you recently did first year med. Now, I will just pre-say that Jeff is at Monash and he's doing the direct entry med path. Now, while there are like so many other universities, even around Australia, it's pretty standard across all the other universities as well. But Jeff, let's talk about how this huge course is structured. So I understand that people like doing med at Monash because it's 5 years and it's direct entry, and by the end of the 5 years, you're a qualified doctor. What does each year look like?
Yeah, right. Because it's like a 5-year course, it's quite big, right? And it's actually been around for quite a while. It was actually created with the university. So it has like, it's about 60 years now, but like it's changed really substantially over time. But right now, for what we're doing, you can sort of almost break down the whole course in like 2 ways, right? You can break it down horizontally and vertically. So horizontally, there are like 5 years, as you said, and the first 2 years are preclinical. So mostly everything will be done in classrooms, or in my case, my bedroom, because I'm online. And then the next 3 years are clinical. So which means we're placed in hospitals and learning will take place there via those rotation, specific ward-based learning and some core curriculum teachings as well, and a lot of self-directed and peer-based learning too. And vertically, there are sort of 4 themes, especially, well, at least at Monash, that sort of go across the 5 years. So theme 1, we've got your personal and professional development, and that includes things like med law and med ethics. And the second theme is population, society, health and illness. So that puts a focus on rural and remote areas and practicing medicine in those regions in the context of much broader societal issues as well. And in theme 3, that is the scientific basis of clinical practice. And that is your like, anatomy, physiology, microbiology, immunology, all that jazz. And in theme 4, that is your clinical skills. And that covers basically everything from history taking and communication skills to stuff like physical examinations and more complex procedural skills as well. But overall, I think it's quite neatly structured. So every step, you know where you're at in this journey.
Absolutely. Like you've just got like such a broad overview. It's not just like textbook study this, like you got practical experience, you got like the ethics. Like I think it's quite nice how it is all structured. But I want to ask, take me back to your first year. What subjects did you do? Like, are you doing basic bio, basic anatomy? You're doing physiology?
Yeah, so, well, because for medicine, we already have like, let's say, electives or subjects that we can choose, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of just force everything down our throat sort of thing. It's more akin to like a program that like takes you by the hand and leads you through the human body system by system. So in year 1, we initially in the first semester, we look at things like broad picture human body and biochem and stuff like that. Whereas in the second semester, we start to focus on systems like musculoskeletal system and cardiovascular system, which includes things like your upper limb, lower limb, and your back. So for each of these systems, we then, through things like lectures, tutorials, workshops, and a bunch of other ways that the faculty will be there to support you, we look at things like anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, and the relevant clinical skills for each system. And then gradually, that's how I think the entire preclinical years are structured.
Lovely. Now, how do you get assessed on these things? Like, are you doing assignments? Are you doing group work? I know you said like a bit of collaborative learning, or are you doing like lab reports? How do you get tested?
Yeah, so there's sort of 2 ways that we can get tested. One of which is through like, as you said, lab reports, stuff like that, just assessments or rather assignments throughout the year. So they will give you like a project, a group project, or like do an essay on your own. Those stuff will be marked. And then on the other hand, you have things like end of year exams, and those are the main contributors to your marks. And I think it's also important to know that for medicine, like our WAMs, at least in the first 2 years at Monash, don't actually matter, right? Because the entire preclinical years is structured on a pass or fail grade basis. So people don't usually worry. I mean, we still do worry because we're medical students, but there tends to be less emphasis on, oh, I need to get like 100% on this assessment and stuff like that.
This is so good that you said, because we come from year 12 or, VC, HSC, and it's like, we need high marks, we need to do so well. But then we get to uni and it's like, oh, don't worry, pass or fail. I think where the skills are on placement or in the clinical, experiences, which is nice, because I think that really goes to show that it's not so competitive, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's funny you mentioned compared to year 12, right? After like such an intense period like year 12, you have like SAC after SAC and you want to get the highest mark you can. And you transition into like year 1, Sem 1. And a lot of people, including me and a lot of my friends who went into med, said that initially they were just like taking like thousands of words of notes on something as trivial as like the Krebs cycle, something that would never need to know in clinical practice. But I guess it's just that like, if you're a medical student, you're more than likely to be like a perfectionist, right? You want to get everything right. So it gets a little bit tense, but I guess you just have to relax a little bit. And as you said, compared to year 12, I would say that it's actually not that competitive and it's a lot more collaborative within the cohort, because well, I think once you're in medicine, there's that sort of belief that, we're all going to become doctors one day and our professional development begins now. So we start to collaborate and there are so many peer support and learning opportunities that can really take you through and accommodate you in your learning journey throughout the 5 years.
That's great. I want to know, and I know a lot of the attendees are wondering, what subjects did you do at high school? And whether you wish you did other ones. Like, for example, did you do bio? Did you do like chemistry or physics? And like, if so, were those subjects repeated in your first year at med?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I studied in year 12, I studied mainstream English, mathematical methods, specialist mathematics, chemistry, and physics. And I also studied Chinese second language advanced. So those were my 6 subjects. And I've got to say that what you learn in med is very, very different from what you learned in high school. I think the entire structure is almost different. And I didn't study biology, but I sort of wish I did. A lot of my friends did biology and they had an easy time transitioning to year 1, Sem 1. But I think looking back at it, you have a biology bridging course that the faculty is really nice and has established for us. So even if you don't do biology, you still have a very like smooth transition process. But if I had to do it, I'd probably do biology as part of my VC subjects. But I think with regards to some of my other subjects, for maths, for instance, I did methods and spec. There is, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, there's quite limited usage of maths, I'm guessing, even in clinical years.
Jeff, you say that, but wait till you get to 5th year and you have to do your prescribing assignment.
Oh no.
I was actually
it's not terrible. It's like there's definitely no calculus or anything like that. It's very basic, like concentrations and working out dosages and stuff. But
yeah, but like you definitely need to know like calculus.
People think I need specialists or physics, so can we like debunk that?
No, yeah, definitely not. 100%
Okay.
no. Yeah, short answer is no.
Goodness.
But I just think like a lot of the skills that you can develop through those subjects are really valuable, like critical thinking that sort of you develop throughout the course of spec or physics. And chemistry is a prerequisite, so you can't really drop that. And it's definitely really helpful with biochem in the first semester of year 1, especially the nutrition component of unit 4 chemistry. But I would say beyond that, it doesn't relate much with the rest of the medical content that we're taught. But on the other hand, I have found that English, to be honest, has been vital in studying medicine because
really,
yeah, I just think like the ability to read quickly, think critically, and speak eloquently will not only help you in your UCAT, your interview, but I think more importantly, it's crucial in your clinical practice, but also within med school, you need to use your English skills and abilities to learn and engage with some of the more abstract concepts.
This is great. All right. So your top tip, biology and English and a little bit of maths.
And if anything else, I'll probably add like maybe Latin as well. I know it sounds really niche, but like just because there's so many vocabulary, so many words you need to know. I just feel like if you did Latin, because like a lot of those anatomical terms have roots in Latin, you know, if you did Latin, it might help a little bit, but I don't know.
That's funny. You'll see everyone like doing like quick Latin courses or like
Yeah.
on YouTube. All right, I've got another question about your experience, particularly in the last 2 years, because COVID has impacted it so much. Like, I feel like you've probably been at uni only a couple of like days or a couple of weeks even. What is it like studying medicine online? Like, are you like meeting not face to face? Are you meeting on Zoom just like this with your teachers? Can you still go to any like placements?
Yeah. So as my first year was almost entirely online, a lot of the practical skills, including physical examinations, were taught online. And lectures, which were originally going to be in person, are now recordings. So rather than Zoom, they're recordings that we just watch, like YouTube videos. And our GP placements in first year and our rural placement in second year, so this year, have also been cancelled. So, but like, yeah, understandably, I think that leaves me and a lot of my cohort less prepared and a bit more apprehensive about our clinical placements next year. I mean, after all, we hardly know how to take a blood pressure, right? But like, to be completely honest, I think that the shift away from almost the clinical experience and the clinical side of things and more towards online learning has almost made us a bit more anxious about a lot of the stuff within the cohort, because we don't know what is truly important to understand and even memorize, and what are just trivial details that we're never going to need. And we tend to just memorize and learn everything just to be safe. And obviously that is not sustainable because there's so much stuff to learn. And that is usually where, as I said, our peer support groups come in, really highlighting the high yield content for us. But overall, like, although it would have been more fun had it been in person, I don't think our learning has been substantially compromised, so to speak. We still have learned all the key theories, and there's still plenty of time and opportunities for us to catch up on the clinical side of things in the next 3 years.
Absolutely. I think the best part is coming for you. I think you've done like the hard part, especially online. So the good part's coming. Thank you guys for sharing. And I also want to add, I saw another question in the chat about health and human development. And I actually spoke with Piper, who's actually a tutor at KIS Academics, for my podcast. So I interviewed her and we did an episode about HHD. And I asked her this very question of whether health and human was like helpful for med. And she said, absolutely, because you learn about like the Medicare system, you learn to like about all those different things. So yeah, if you're doing health and human development, very helpful. That's what she said. But let's now shift to the third kind of discussion today, which is all about like year 3, 4, 5. So we're going to talk social life, we'll talk placements, we'll talk about research. Miss Sarah Rav, take it away. Tell us about your placement experience, like maybe what kind of hospitals you've been to, what it was like, how many days you were there.
Okay, so firstly, I want to say first year and second year, like pre-clin, yeah, the content was sort of interesting, but it was when I started third year that I was like, oh my God, this is actually what I want to do. Like this is 100% what I can see myself doing in the future, because being around patients, working with patients, working with a team, working in the hospital, it is absolutely like nothing else. It's absolutely like nothing like first year and second year, right? So if you are going through pre-clin years and you're sort of like, don't really know how I feel about this, wait it out until your first couple of placements and then decide. So in terms of placements, this is just the way that Monash undergrad works. I had 1 year, so my first clinical year was my third year of medical school, and that was basically in that year I did the medical and surgical, like general medical and general medicine and general surgery, as well as the specialties. So I had about 6 weeks on each rotation, 6 weeks on gen med and gen surg, then 6 weeks on like cardiology, respiratory, gastroenterology, plastic surgery, orthopedics, stuff like that. I didn't get to rotate through every specialty, but we got quite a wide mix. And then 4th year was our GP, pediatrics, obstetrics and gynecology, and psychiatry rotations. And then in 5th year, you have to do another gen med, another gen surg, and emergency, and then you get some preferences. So my specialties were gastroenterology, and aged care, which is not a preference, but yeah, so you have to do it. And so that's how rotations work. In terms of actual placements, I think it's very interesting because nobody really knows what doctors even do. Like, it's kind of weird, but basically, the way most things run, for example, if you're on a medical specialty, is that you'll show up, you'll do ward rounds, which is where you go and see every patient who's under your care. You check in on them, you review their management, write up a plan, and so on and so forth. And for some specialties, that can take from like 8 o'clock to 12 p.m. And then the rest of the day, you're doing jobs on the ward. So you're charting drugs, you're writing, as in, these are what the doctors are doing. As a medical student, you're just observing, but the doctors will be charting drugs, writing up notes, handing over to the nurses, stuff like that. And so as a medical student, what you do is you often just observe you're basically part of the team, but unfortunately we can't prescribe drugs, and you probably won't write notes until later on when you're more confident in it. But that's mostly what placement is. And you can get the opportunity to help out, like especially as a 3rd year, you can put in IV cannulas, you can take bloods, you can give shots and stuff like that. So that's kind of fun. But often just being around medicine in action it takes your learning to a completely different level. So instead of just reading from a textbook, you suddenly see a patient with heart failure, and then you see the doctors prescribe a like a diuretic because they're and you're like, oh, that all makes sense now. And it just helps put things. It's a much more fun way of learning things, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. Now I want to ask, because you're like obviously the queen of productivity, you've got like so much study, you have placement, you have all like this on your plate. How do you balance everything?
Okay, so like I could maybe talk about this like 3 hours. I will shorten it to like my top 3 tips. But I think for me, one of the things that's helped the most is planning out my day to the very minute. So I didn't realize that this was a thing that people don't actually do, but every night before I go, like, because I've been doing it for ages, but every night before I go to bed, like I write a list of like exactly what I'm going to do the next day in like time, like with times. So like literally on my notes, it'll be 4:30 to 6 a.m. wake up, gym, 6 to 6:30 get dressed, 6:30 head to hospital, 7 to 12 ward rounds, 12 to 1 Anki. Like literally my entire day is planned out. And I think that gives me a very good idea of how much time I have and what I can do in that time. Because if I wasn't doing that, I feel like I just would have lots of random 30-minute blocks that I'm like, oh, but I have to go, I have to leave in 15 minutes. So I can't really start anything now. But if you plan your day the night before, then you're like, oh, 15 minutes, I could probably do a couple of practice questions in that time, sort of thing. So you're set, you're good to go, you've got a game plan. And then the other thing I think is that I just got really good at procrastinating. As in, I know that sounds weird, but for me, when I procrastinate, it's like I'm doing something productive still, if that makes sense. So it's like for example, I have a presentation, speaking of research later on, I've got a research presentation that I need, because I'm presenting at a conference and I need to do this PowerPoint. But instead, I've like, I sort of put it off today, and I did a practice prescribing exam instead, because I was like, oh, that sounds more fun, instead of like doing something else like watching Netflix. So other things that I procrastinate doing, like replying to emails, admin tasks, filming TikToks, editing TikToks, not scrolling through TikTok though, because unfortunately that is not as productive as I would like it to be. But yeah, I think those were my biggest 2 tips.
Love it. And maybe you can touch on motivation, because I feel like a lot of current like year 11 and year 12 students, I'm personally burnt out, and I know these students would be as well. How can we stay motivated in times of like uncertainty when we're just like over it?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I want to say is that the past 2 years have been pretty terrible. Like, if you aren't feeling motivated, that is absolutely no fault of your own. And like, for example, Jeff has spent his first 2 years of university online. Like, that is, I can understand that there must be a ton of like frustration, guilt, lack of connection. And that is totally fair enough that if you don't feel motivated. But one thing I talk about, and I guess, you know, COVID is an extreme circumstance of it, but one thing I talk about, especially in my productivity masterclass, is that you can't rely on motivation, because motivation it comes in waves. And, you know, if everybody was motivated all the time, then we'd all be achieving, you know, we'd all be successful. We'd all be super, super high achievers. But the thing is that what separates the people who achieve versus the people who, I guess, don't, is the ability to work through the days when you don't feel motivated. Because there will be days when you like, I use the gym as like an analogy. There are definitely days when I wake up and I don't want to work out, right? Like, it's not like I jump out of bed every morning being like, hey, it's time to work out. It's sort of just a habit that I formed. And so it doesn't even cross my mind that I'm not going to work out. It's sort of just like this is what I do daily. So the way to overcome a lack of motivation is to sort of, unfortunately, make yourself do something for a couple of days, get into a routine until it becomes second nature to you and it feels weird when you don't do it. So what I mean by that is if you don't feel motivated to study, yeah, that's unfortunate. But, you know, sit at your desk for just an hour in the morning, and if you do that every day, it'll just feel routine to you, and you won't need motivation to push yourself to do it. It will just feel natural. Yeah.
So true. That's so true. In some sense, we could force ourselves at the beginning, and then, like you said, it'll just be like muscle memory. It'll just like
it's literally like that. The way I think of it is willpower is a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so this is my last official question before we tackle some of the audience member questions. And so let's think at the end of the 5-year degree, we've graduated, we're at our like graduation ceremony. Let's pretend it's in person. What are the career outcomes? So like, can I like be a GP? Can I be a specialist straight away?
Okay.
Like, what do I expect?
Yeah, because, you know, I feel like the biggest myth is like the default is a GP. Like, I feel like as soon as people always think like as soon as you graduate from medical school, you're immediately a GP or something. But what people don't understand is that GPs are specialists as well. They have to undergo specialist GP training. So how it works is once you graduate from medical school, you have to do 1 year of internship. Like, you have to do it, and then you are fully qualified. Technically, you can, you know, prescribe drugs and do everything as an intern, but you still have to do a year of internship before you're technically fully qualified. Then you do a couple of years of residency. And in that time, if you sort of know what specialty you want to go into, you can pick a particular residency program. So you can pick like a physician's residency or a general residency or a surgical residency. And then after that, you start applying for specialty programs, whether that be, for example, surgery, physician's training, general practice, like emergency medicine, and so on and so forth. And different specialty training programs will take different amounts of time and will also require different criteria to get in. And then about, you know, like, let's say 10 years like down the road or whatever, when you finally finish your specialty training program, then you are sort of called like a consultant. And that is when you sort of have the responsibility on you, if that makes sense. So it's your name on the discharge summaries, it's your name on the intake sort of thing, it's your name on the surgery list, but you will obviously be working with your juniors, and you'll be teaching them, and you'll be training them up through the ranks as well.
Love it. That's so nice to end this discussion. We've gone right from year 12 entry to like what it's going to be like down the track. So I can see the Q&A is going off, and there's so many great questions. Look, I'll be honest, we're not going to cover them all today, but I've picked out a couple we can start off with just to, you know, finish off this discussion. And I want to direct this to both Sarah and Jeff. So maybe we'll start with Jeff. Why did you want to do direct entry as opposed to studying it later in life as a postgrad?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I suppose that goes back to what Shanaka said as well, because if you are really set on studying medicine, going and pursuing a direct entry pathway just takes a lot of the stress away, preparing for the interview and stuff like that. I just want to get straight into it. And also a direct entry is shorter than a postgraduate entry. And if you want to just dive straight into the clinical side of things, I think a direct entry is faster. And if that's what you're into, by all means, go for it.
I might just add to that. It's like a lot of people think it's a 1 year difference, but if you're going for postgrad, you have to generally do 3 years. And a lot of people don't get in on their first attempt with GAMSAT as well. So it tends to be a 4 or 5 year attempt plus another 4 years. So if you know it's for you, you actually save 3 or 4 years of time.
Is that the same with you, Sarah?
I just want to throw in a little like caveat to that. The other thing is though, like it's not a race as well. Because for me, I chose direct entry as well because it was shorter. And I ended up having to take a gap year just because like I was unwell. And I thought it was like the absolute end of the world. Like I thought, oh, like I'm so behind, I'm failing. Like, do you know what I mean? But what I've come to realize is that like I'm working, like I've got 5th years in my course who are 30 and married with children. I've got doctors, I've got interns who are 40 who have come from like nurse, like we're going to be learning for like, we're going to be working for a very, very long time. And so a couple of extra years doesn't actually make a difference in the long term. That being said, obviously the benefit of that is as a student, you're not earning money. So I can see why, you know, you sort of want to get through the pathway as quick as possible. But also, you know, just like, don't tie yourself to just like, or don't stress yourself out over a couple of years. The other reason why I chose direct entry is because like I said, I very much knew I wanted to do medicine, and I knew that doing a course, like doing a biomed or a science undergrad, or even, you know, any other undergrad that could get me into it would be broader than just going straight into medicine. And so I would be learning a lot of content that might not necessarily be related to medicine. And some people, me included, sort of didn't really interest me, having to learn that additional content. But that being said, like postgrads in my course are very, very, very well, you know, well versed in all that stuff. So yeah. In
some ways they might even have their own life experience.
Oh, yeah. You can just tell because like they have, you can tell who's postgrad and undergrad because they're very mature.
Absolutely. And we've just chatted for like, this time has gone so quickly, I feel, but let's do like a final like question. I'm putting you on the spot. Think back to your like year 11 and year 12 self, and I want you to give yourself some advice, some wise advice, some wisdom of what like you know now. What would you want to go back and tell your younger self? Whoever can start, whoever can think of it first.
I can start.
Go for it.
I think I'd say the most important thing is sort of the relationship you have with yourself. And I think the older you sort of get, the more you realize often you're so hard on yourself and you place so much pressure and expectation on yourself. And you kind of realize, hey, it's all good. You know, like I have been through so many ups and downs where I felt like my life is over, the world's like collapsing on me. And you sort of realize that you just pick yourself up and you take those experiences with you and you grow from it, right? And I honestly think that's the most important thing. Just like learn to have this ability to, just have a really good relationship with yourself. And you'll actually achieve whatever you want to at the time it's meant to be achieved if you do that. So that's my biggest tip.
Oh, love this. I'm inspired. I love it. All right, who's up next? Sarah, Jeff?
I'll go. It's very similar. So fun fact, or not actually that fun, but I got my ATAR. I received my ATAR and I cried for like 2 weeks because the expectation I set for myself was way too high. And for some reason, all I could I guess it is sort of your whole life. You're drilled into, for 12 years, you're drilled into, it's drilled into you that this is what you're working towards, this ATAR, this number at the end of high school. And I placed so much weight on it that it, so what I'm trying to say is it's just a number, and it doesn't define your future. It doesn't define who you are, and nobody asks about it after university, like literally nobody. So
I'll jump in. It's cringe if you ask at uni, hey, what ATAR did you get? Like, people
I only do this when Monash is around and I'm trying and I'm trying to make fun of. No, I'm trying to impress new people that we're being introduced to. But honestly, it's cringe. Like, just to bring up your ATAR. Even sometimes I bring up my ATAR on TikTok and people are like, wow, like, get over it, like, you're 60. And like, that's totally fair enough. I agree with that. But the thing is, like, because of that, I want you guys to realize that it's okay to have balance. It's okay to go, obviously not in lockdown, but it's okay to go to parties in year 12. It's okay to take a couple of days off studying. It's okay to have that, like, have dinner with your family instead of spending time in your room studying, because that is what's also important. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, yes, your ATAR your ATAR might determine if you get into a particular uni course, but there's lots of different pathways to get into it. And is that really, more important than living in, than enjoying your life at the moment? Like, is it? Yeah.
Love it. And Jeff, do you want to end this with what you would tell your younger self?
I feel like we've gone really, really deep, and I'm not sure if I can bring it back.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, I guess we've talked a little bit about our relationship with ourselves and how we can condition ourselves in VCE. So I just want to touch on a few things about our relationship with others, because looking back on it, I feel like with the things we remember isn't like the hours we've spent studying, but it's the times we've had with other people, whether it's our mates at school, at lunchtime or recess, or it's with our teachers or with our family, right? Really cherish the moments that you have with the people around you, your support network. And not only would that make your journey to study whatever you want a lot easier, but you also look back at those memories in incredible fondness.
Oh, I love that. A round of applause to all our panelists today. This chat has been so great. Not only have we talked about med, there's been a bit of D&M philosophical questioning at the end too. Before we do wrap up, what we are going to do is post in the chat a link to a bit of a goodie bag. So what we will do is we have collated all our details. We've collated a bit of a feedback form, and there is a bit of a surprise in that link as well. So Monash will post that in the chat, and we'd love for you to fill it out as well, or I believe you'll get it in an email. But thank you. If you are still here and you want to take a photo of us and pop it on your story, we will all repost it on our social media. So maybe let us know, we can pose. But yeah, thank you everyone. It was amazing.
Thanks, Mia, for hosting. I'm just going to post a event kind of thank you page in the chat, but it'll get emailed out to you guys a bit later as well. And then we'll probably also send out a bit of a feedback form later just to see what you guys thought of the event, because it was the first time we all ran it. But yeah, any last words from everyone else?
I might just add that we had so many questions, and if you all fill out on the feedback form that you enjoyed it, we might do another one, because we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, we almost had 100 questions asked in the Q&A.
That's crazy.
I was typing as fast as I could.
I'll just add,
I love it.
Feel free to reach out. I think I speak for Sarah and Jeff as well. If you have any questions about anything, we're very friendly people, so shoot us a message.
Absolutely. We love DMs.
Definitely.
Yes, please.
Spam them.
I might stay on for a tiny bit longer and just answer a couple more questions. But for the most part, I think that covers everything. Thanks for attending, everyone.
Thank you
And a
guys.
big thank you to
so
our
much.
Thanks,
panelists.
guys.
Before
Super
you
fun.
go, can I just do a selfie on my thing? Okay, 1, 2. Hang on. 1, 2. Love it.
I love how both you and me just went like that instinctively.
Yeah, copy me more than I just got fair enough.
Yeah.
We're used to this. The other thing, guys, is obviously look after yourself during lockdown. For those who are in lockdown, for those who aren't, look after yourself during the exam period. Reach out to people if you need to. Reach out to friends, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, take care of your emotional health, mental health. It's nothing more important this time.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm gonna go
See
to
you
sleep.
guys.
Bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Hey guys.
Damn. I think that went really well.
Yeah, that was awesome. I feel like it needed to be 2 hours. For any attendees still here,
Yeah.
and I can see there's some still hanging on, please tell us like what you thought so we can do another one for you all.
Yeah, we'd love to do another one and like on other careers and stuff as well, and more about med even. But we had so many questions. I think we literally looking into the chat now, we had 99 questions. So yeah, it's
I was
crazy.
scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah, no, there was so much going on, but thanks for like answering some of them as well, Jeff, and like keeping the chat going on. But I'm glad that you guys found it really useful, and we'll send some goodies and whatnot via email afterwards. And we'll upload this to YouTube as well and send that link out. So you guys will be able to rewatch any parts of it if you need to.
Love it. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll end it here. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.